We're going to let people just go ahead and come in and get settled. I'm pretending I'm in the tropics today. I hope your winter has started. Well, it's not quite started yet. I hope the holiday season has started nicely for you. Welcome in, everybody. Well, hello, friends around the state. I'm Angie Hacker with the California Climate and Energy Collaborative, here with Kelsey and Rochelle from the SEEK team, and we're really pleased to invite you back for the 36th meeting of the Local Energy Resources Network. This is our last meeting of the year. Can you believe it? The year is almost done, and as we always like to do in these last few years, we like to do an annual policy wrap-up in December, just to get our heads around what happened this year and what we might look forward to in the policy world in the next year, with particular focus to what it means for the funding outlook for you all. And I don't know about you, but the 2024 has been a wild ride. I'm excited to digest it with you a little bit. And since we last met, I just also note in the policy world, but internationally, COP happened out there in, I think, Azerbaijan, and I only raise it because I just want to share that from my vantage point. I didn't go to it, but a lot of the state folks did. Emphasis coming out of that had a lot to do with the key role on subnational entities and how you all are doing on emission reductions, how important you are to emission reductions around the world. And I'm guessing that message is going to continue to be amplified back here in California, and hopefully raising our profile of what the work that all of you are doing here in California. Okay, let's dive into our conversation for today. And while we do, I would really love to invite everybody to please introduce yourself over chat, just who you are, where you're from, and anything you'd like to share. As always, we're here to help you access opportunities that can advance your energy and climate goals locally. We're here today to do kind of our normal system. We're going to run through opportunities, our opportunity roundtable, and then we're going to hear from a couple of guest speakers. We're fortunate today to have someone here who we don't normally hear from, who's going to speak to us about a threat to local municipal bonds for public infrastructure. So that's going to be a short 5-minute conversation, giving you kind of a heads up on something that you're going to want to bring to the attention of your finance folks. And then our main featured speaker today is Roger Dickinson. He is the CivicWell Policy Director, and he's the one that's going to give us the larger rundown primarily of some legislative and executive policy moves. We have a couple of updates for you on the SEEK forum at the end, and then if you can hang around at noon, we have 15 minutes for our bonus breakouts, which is an informal time to continue the conversation in any way you like. All right, let's dive in. And don't worry, right? We always give you the hyperlink cheat sheet and all the resources and all these slides and the recording after we're done. So I always talk fast here, but you'll get access to all of these things. This is our opportunity roundtable. We're trying to highlight for you mainly funding, assistance, and other input opportunities. And I'm going to mainly go through the ones that are highlighted in yellow because we haven't talked about them before. And last time we got together, I guess in November, it was a lot of transportation focus, and that's still true. There's a lot of these transportation grants coming due in January that hope y'all are taking advantage of. And I have to tell you that I'm trying to kind of dive in a little bit more on the philanthropic world and see what I can mine from there, just knowing what we're in for with the change in federal administration, wanting to look under all rocks for what funding opportunities we can highlight for you. First one here is from Climate United. It's called Next Pre-Development Grants, and it's the first round of it. We've got a link here. It's due January 10th, which I think it's kind of mean, but it's up to $30 million over the next 5 years total in funding, up to $300,000 per organization. You'd be eligible if you're a nonprofit organization, state or local entities, tribes, and institutions of higher education. And the goal of it is to help those institutions to accelerate early stage clean energy projects through planning and project financing. And so they give you grant funding for planning, and they give you technical assistance and community engagement. So they're hoping that you identify solutions that meet your unique needs and lay the groundwork for projects including solar, green buildings, and electric transportation. So it's not a huge one, but I think they're really tapping into something that I see all the time, and what I hear from you guys is that pre-development is an unfunded really critical step in the pipeline of all of your projects. So I think they're tapping into a real need here. I hope you take advantage of it. So the grants will be up to 2-year grants here. Another one to highlight here, this is like not necessarily in our normal wheelhouse, but CAL FIRE has a forest health grant. It's due January 15th. I'm bringing it up because I know how many of you have in your climate action plans fuel reduction or fire mitigation as part of an emission reduction strategy, and you probably are dealing with it on your adaptation side too. There's $70 million total available through CAL FIRE. The awards amounts are between $750,000 and $7 million. So eligibility, locals are eligible, so our state and federal public agencies, tribes, universities, special districts, and a few others, including nonprofit organizations. And the idea here is to fund active restoration and reforestation activities aimed at providing a more resilient and sustained forest to ensure future existence of forests in California, while also mitigating climate change and protecting communities from fire risk. So there's a lot of more information here about eligible activities, but this might be one to pass along to your fire folk. This will be a grant that must be completed by 2030, so it's actually a pretty long trajectory if you get awarded. That duration's long. Okay, next one up here, and you're, noticing I'm going to sort of lean in here on both philanthropic and state. This is one from the California Energy Commission, technical assistance for zero emission vehicle infrastructure funding. This one you have a little longer time, so February 28th is the due date. They have $4 million available, but this one's kind of different. This isn't just your regular grant. This is more like they're looking for a program administrator to provide technical assistance around the state. And so you can get up to $2 million. You have to be a tribe or any kind of public or private entity, with the exception of investor-owned utilities. And the purpose is for third-party implementers to provide TA for communities eligible to seek federal and state funding for zero-emission vehicle infrastructure. So if you're playing that role of helping others get money for these kinds of projects for zero-emission vehicles, then this might be something for you. Finally, I wanted to raise up the Climate Resilience Fund. This is a new grant called the Climate Smart Communities Initiative. Actually may not be new, but they have a round that just recently became available, and it's due on March 3rd, so a little bit of time here to apply. I imagine this is not going to be as difficult as some of the public agency applications. Eligibility is to any U.S. community facing climate-related challenges, and you have to be represented, or the applicant has to be a CBO and either local, regional, or tribal government. So those two kind of combined. It's a 12-month grant, and they also provide training and technical assistance. So it's definitely more on the resilient side, but I wanted to flag it for you all. Those are some of the new funding opportunities I'm seeing. If you see other things, we would love to hear about them. Please help us out there. We don't know it all. Drop it in the chat if you know of any other funding or other assistance opportunities that your peers can take advantage of. I recently wrote an article basically making the case that we have to make the most of our remaining resources, and part of the way we do that is by leveraging what already exists and helping each other know more about it. Finally, I just want to share some input opportunities here. There's quite a few, and we learned about a lot of them actually at our recent Reach IE event. A lot of state agencies coming out talking about all the ways that they need your input on their policy plans and projects. So here's a few. Strategic Growth Council by tomorrow is asking for input on their affordable housing and sustainable communities draft round 9 guidelines. So it's a big funding source. It's one of the most reliable, recurring, largest funding source that is eligible for folks like you, and it's also an incredibly complicated application. If you have any interest in providing them input on how those guidelines and the eventual solicitation end up going out, feel free to provide that directly to them, and we have a link here for you. I may be submitting comment just briefly, kind of shucking the Better Funding report their way, even though they've seen it plenty of times. I wanted to make sure those of you that are local governments are aware that we have our next SLEEK meeting happening in 2 days, so on the 12th. So that's our state and local energy and climate coordination meeting. This is where we get together now with about 9 different agencies who have really been awesome and keep continuing to come out to have these constructive conversations with us about our statewide barriers and potentially, co-creating some solutions with locals. This one's going to be an extension of a conversation we have had on the barriers of to local climate action, but we're going to talk a lot about the progress that has been made in the years since we've last discussed it. So please come out for that. We're going to have a grand array of speakers, including from local and state agencies, to really talk us through what's happened and some positive moves in the direction of making local climate action a bit easier for you all. A couple more things. California Energy Commission has its draft integrated energy policy report out right now for comment. That's due in 2 days, sorry to say, but if that's on your radar, the integrated energy policy report is this like multi-agency, really important guiding document, kind of creating a strategic plan for the state's energy policies. Again, with the Strategic Growth Council, I'll be here on December 13th. Those of you that were at our Reach IE event know that we are coordinating closely with the state on a series of regional convenings. And so we are going to have a meeting on the 13th, so that's on Friday, where they want you all to help shape what these state-led regional convenings end up looking like. So come share some input. Cal EPA is asking for input on their round 2 environmental justice action grant guidelines. So that's another one. If you want to shape a program, maybe you've used it, maybe you have some input on ways it could be better. There's an opportunity to do that by January 10th. And then finally, CARB has a climate action survey that is circulating around, wanting to get general public input on climate action priorities. And part of that is the beginning stage of what will be a lot more engagement with them over the next year in relationship to their comprehensive climate action plan that came out of EPA funding, CPRG funding. So that more to come on that, but they basically want folks like you to help shape what the comprehensive climate action plan for the state will be. Okay, so that's the roundup. Like I said, if you know of anything else, drop it in the chat, and we'll keep this up every month. All right, let's go to our next slide, please. Okay, now I'm really pleased to be able to introduce you to a new friend that I met at ASAP, so American Society of Adaptation Professionals Policy Practices Group. And he had something to share that I thought you all really needed to know about related to a potential threat to municipal bonds and their tax exemption that could affect critical public infrastructure projects like energy and climate related. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to Tom Foe. He is the founder and president of Municipal Market Analysis. And he's really become, it seems to be, this expert in the space between climate change risk and municipal markets, and even has testified before Senate. So we're really lucky to have him here for a few minutes to share this, this potential threat you might want to share with your finance folks.
Thanks, Angie. And it's Tom Doe, D-O-E, but that's all right. Don't worry about it. I just want to make sure that was clear. But it's nice to join you all, and it was a pleasure meeting Angie last week on the ASAP call. And we were talking about the different potential curbs and funding for climate adaptation. And I shared with the group the current concerns that the municipal bond industry, which funds about 70 to 80% of U.S. infrastructure, is under threat under the Trump administration. The emphasis of the Republicans and the Trump administration in particular, of course, is on the extension of the tax cuts that he put through his first time through, and the industry is taking it very seriously. And so there are two trade associations in particular, and one that's I think relevant to the group on this call, which is the Government Finance Officers Association, GFOA. Emily Brock is the head of the lobbying effort for that organization, which I think probably many people who are on this call, probably their cities are members of that trade group. And I'll give Angie the contact, Emily's contact information too, in the event that any of you want to reach out directly to her. But what we're seeing is that I've been in this industry for 40 years now, have followed the 100-year-plus-year history that the exemption has been available in order to reduce the cost of financing for state and local governments for important things like flood control, stormwater handling, water and sewer, airports, healthcare institutions, hospitals, assisted living, highways, bridges, all these types of things are funded primarily through the municipal bond market. So if the exemption were to be eliminated, which is again, we think there's about a 50% chance of that happening right now, which is the highest percent that I think it's ever been at threat. Probably the last time that it was severely threatened was back in 1985, 86, when there was a bill that was introduced to the House of Representatives regarding the exemption. But so this is pretty pretty high risk, I guess, is just the point to emphasize. And I would encourage you all to mobilize and reach out to representatives and Senate. I had a opportunity. I think it's Senator Padilla. I think it's one of the senators from California who I met when I testified before Senate budget in this past January. And he asked, well, what can we do in order around climate adaptation? And I said, well, first thing is make sure to preserve the exemption to keep the costs low and also to allow cities and states to plan their adaptation and resilience policies and plans going forward. We think that the increase in cost would be about 2%. So let's say if there was a 5% interest rate on a tax exempt security that would be financing some form of infrastructure, that could increase to 7%. So that'd be a significant increase in costs. And so especially with federal funds disappearing that came out during COVID and with the various with the IRA and Obama administration, that support for low state and local governments, with that a lot of that evaporating in 2026, this would be just an additional cost to the state and local governments. So we think that climate adaptation is probably going to increase over the next 10 years. The funding through the municipal bond market from its annual issuance of about $500 billion to $1 trillion in mid-2030s. So a very significant financing mechanism for climate adaptation. We're certainly doing our part in a role of advocacy in the financial world. And so we'll leave it to you on the grounds for some of the specific projects. But I just wanted to drop in. Angie, thank you for having me to make a few comments on this. And I will pass along to you the contact information at GFOA that I think will be helpful resource and also for information to keep you all abreast of what's going on. And I do apologize. I could probably take one question. I do have to run, so I'm out of time today.
I do see one question here. Thanks, Tom, from Elena from CARB. Hi, Elena.
Hi, Angie. Hi, Tom. Thank you.
Hey.
And Tom, if you don't have time for this, happy to follow up after, because I have one question which maybe has a longer answer and one question which is a shorter answer. The one with the short answer is preservation of tax exemption for California taxpayers. Like the California muni market is pretty strong because we have pretty high taxes in our state. So thoughts on kind of like natural demand in California if a federal exemption is removed. And I guess just wanted to confirm that like California's, like there would still maybe be a market, I guess, for munis, for California munis, for California.
They would simply be taxable, is the short answer.
Oh, okay. And then the question with the longer answer, I guess, would be why is this on the table for this administration? And did the previous Trump administration attempt to do something like this? And
well, because the tax cuts got passed the first time, and they're set to expire in the early part of 2025. And so the new incoming administration wants to extend those tax cuts. And so in order to pay for them, they have to offset the costs, especially if they go through the reconciliation process with other expenditures that might or cost to the federal government. The municipal bond exemption is roughly estimates are pretty wide, between $35 to $50 billion annually. And so while in the big scheme of a federal deficit that's in the trillions, it's a relatively, it's almost nickels and dimes. but the perception of what we understand is that they'll take any scrap possible in order to get those tax cuts extended in next year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And with that,
All right,
I'll
thank you,
leave to
Tom.
to Roger in to follow up. And again, thank you for having me, and I'll be in touch with you, Angie.
All right, appreciate it.
Very welcome. Bye-bye.
That was lovely. I mean, I would imagine you'll be able to take this recording and pass it along. That would be a great way if this is not in your wheelhouse to get that information out to the right folks. And so now we can turn it over to our friend Roger Dickinson, who's going to provide an overview of the year's legislative and executive action. So thanks. Take it away, Roger.
Well, thanks very much, Angie. It's good to be back with everybody once again, looking back on 2024 and thinking about 2025. So why don't we jump right into it and take the next slide. The year, in many respects, ended the way it began, and that is true to a great degree with respect to utility rates, especially electric rates. So I just thought I would look back to the early part of the year, and you all recall that the legislature had previously given the PUC the authority and direction to move to rates that were income based, at least in part. We were seeing electric rates go up fairly dramatically, especially through the heart of the pandemic times, mostly driven not so much by the pandemic, of course, but driven by wildfire, by transmission and distribution costs, and according to a couple of analyses, rooftop solar costs. In the early part of the year, there was an effort to try to um, essentially reduce or reverse the rates that the PUC had adopted, and the primary bill to do that was AB 1999 by Assembly Member Irwin, which would have substituted a different approach for the rate setting. There was a lot of controversy around this. Ultimately, the bill died in the Assembly Appropriations Committee, but the issue of what was going on with electric utility rates certainly didn't go away. And so as we go through the slides today, we'll come back to that. But this is something of a theme for the beginning, the middle, and the end of the year, I would say. So let's go to the next one. We're going to run through some legislation here that did make it into law right now. And one bill of interest is AB 2427 by Assemblymember McCarty. He's now left the legislature. He will be the new mayor of the city of Sacramento, but he did carry legislation this year addressing EV charging curbside. And some jurisdictions have been experimenting with this, but there really hasn't been any standard practice or approach. Part of the impetus for this is that studies show as much as 80% of EV charging occurs at home, but for those who live in places where, say, multifamily residences or places where they don't have access to readily available to charging from home, it creates a disincentive to have those people move away from fossil fuel generated vehicles to EVs. And so this bill is designed to try to move the needle on creating more available curbside charging access. So watch for that one. GoBiz has some work to do here, but this could become something of real utility in a number of neighborhoods potentially. I would say. Why don't we go to the next one? This is a bill by Assembly Member Isaac Bryan, which recognized that extreme heat is actually the most deadly of extreme weather forms that we have, and yet we haven't in a kind of systematic or comprehensive way incorporated it into our general plans at the local level, into our safety elements. And so this bill adds extreme heat as a piece of what has to be considered in the safety element of general plans, and hopefully becomes something of a springboard for matching or accessing hazard mitigation money that can be available through FEMA as time goes on, or state funding that's addressed at extreme heat, including money that's going to be coming available in the next few years through the passage of Proposition 4, the climate bond, this past November. So we can scoot on to the next one. And again, now we start getting back to the issue of rates, and this was a bill that sought to try to send a signal that the legislature was interested in seeing both rates reduced and reduction in cost to ratepayers. It looks like the slide it doesn't quite come out as clearly, but this bill was ultimately dropped by the author, Assembly Member Petrie Norris, who chairs the Assembly Energy and Utilities Committee, and the real point of this bill that was problematic was the source for giving this one-time credit was going to be to reduce, as you can see, other funds that are used for some very critical energy efficiency programs. So there was a lot of reaction to the bill when it was offered up late in the legislative session to say, well, trying to give some relief to electric ratepayers was fine. The trying to use these sources was very problematic and actually moved in the wrong direction. So as you can see, the issue of electric utility rates resurfaced at the end of the session, as it had been something of a controversy throughout the year for members of the legislature and the administration. Now let's go to the next one. This bill, also, as you can see, by Assemblymember Petrie Norris, was signed into law and is perhaps can be seen consistent with the executive order we're going to talk about in a few minutes, issued by the administration after the legislature concluded its session this year. But this is intended to carry that issue of looking at ways to try to reduce the electric rates and electric charges to customers and ratepayers. So it's just another emblem of the extent to which this issue is seen as very problematic for the public. And so legislators feel the pressure with rates going up to try to respond to that. So watch for this. Whether I think what you're going to see is we're going to talk about in a moment with the executive order. You're going to see some early information back to the legislature and the governor on this issue of electric rates. But then I expect this work, according to this bill, will go on into the spring as a fuller package, perhaps in conjunction with the budget even, gets developed to address rates. So we're going to see, I think, more of this. I see a question in the chat about the idea of 3121 possibly coming back with the advent of the executive order and this legislation for amount of 3264. Yes, I think that's definitely a possibility. So something to keep an eye on. Absolutely. Then we can go to the next one. And I've done these by the way, not so much in thematic order, but rather in bill order. So those were the assembly bills that I wanted to highlight for you. Now we're going to look at a few of the Senate bills. But a number of these bills, including AB 3264, this bill, SB 1272, there were a handful of bills, some of which I've included, some of which I haven't, that all came in the last hours of the legislative session, and were all promoted under the rubric of addressing producing electricity more cheaply and reducing rates. So in one way or another, these are all intended, these bills were all intended short-term or longer term to try to reduce the cost of electricity. It's somewhat interesting to look at what's happened with the use of electricity. For a long time, California was pretty flat in its consumption. Even though we added people, we got much more energy efficient. So in the aggregate, consumption didn't really go up. But then as we have moved more toward electrifying our homes, and electrifying our transportation system, things of that kind, then consumption has started to go up and costs and rates have started to go up. And so even though in California, the overall energy costs for ratepayers are relatively comparable or even less than a lot of places in the country, here they've been going up very, very rapidly for those reasons. And that's what the legislature and the governor have been reacting to. So as you can see, this is a bill by Senator John Laird from the Central Coast to try to reduce the cost for environmental review for clean energy facilities by doing what's called a program EIR, that is an overarching EIR that could, environmental impact report, that could apply to facilities in general. And then if you have a facility that might have some specific issues, there could be more focused environmental review on those specific issues for that particular facility. So this bill, though, did not make it out of the assembly in the final days. I think it's again one that we might anticipate seeing coming back in the upcoming year in the new session. So let me go to the next slide. This bill by Senator Ana Caballero is in the same, I would say, in the same general category of looking at how costs in the environmental review process can be reduced. In this case, she was focused on hydrogen producing facilities. So, things that will produce energy are again on the target for members of the legislature looking for ways that they can, both in substance and in message, I'd say, communicate that they're doing what they can to try to reduce energy costs. This bill, as you can see, was signed into law. The next one by Senator Bill Dodd, who has now left the Senate. He was termed out this year. As you can see, it died in the Assembly again very late in the session when it was proffered. Senator Dodd, of course, as many of you may know, represented Napa, Sonoma, that part of the state. They, of course, have seen incredibly disastrous and deadly wildfires over the last number of years. He has spent in his more recent years a lot of energy on trying to address wildfire threat, understandably, and so he offered this bill, which actually is one of, I think, what you're going to see is an ongoing number of efforts to look at whether the approach utilities are using to address wildfire ignition threat really comprise the best approach. And so the operating idea, I think, in a lot of cases for the utilities, and I think for a lot of the regulators, has been let's take those heavy-duty transmission lines and let's bury them and reduce the risk of wildfire ignition by virtue of getting the transmission lines underground. Well, that's as we all know, that's enormously expensive, and so now what you're starting to see is a questioning of whether or not that really is a benefit worth the cost, or is there a better way to reduce the risk of wildfire ignition while doing so in a way that's less expensive and more affordable. So even though this bill didn't make it, I certainly expect the question to be fully part of the discussion as we see further efforts this year, this coming year in 2025, on the subject of what we're doing about utility rates, electric rates in particular. Let's go to the next slide, and I put this one in because I wanted to remind everybody about the budget. We should never stop thinking about the budget because it's so critical to all the discussions, not just financial but policy discussions that go on. We were in a pretty deep hole last year, looking at the 24-25 budget. As you can see, we had an almost $47 billion deficit, which was resolved by a number of steps. The biggest cuts in the budget were taken by programs and projects in the climate area, although there were some of those that were shifted to the greenhouse gas reduction fund that mitigated the cuts to a certain extent. But that's where you also are wise to look at the connection back to Prop 4, which comes in with some money that bulks up again some of these categories that got cut in the budget. But I would say, for those of you who are interested in this particular aspect, one of the things to watch in the upcoming governor's budget is, are there further cuts proposed in the climate-related programs based on the argument, well, look, we got $10 billion in the climate bond, so we can make some further cuts in climate-related programs. Of course, we all know 10 billion to address climate is the proverbial drop in the bucket. So that's an issue we need to stay on top of, I think, for all of us. And extreme heat and community resilience. I wanted to just use that as an illustration of what was done in the budget, but there were some significant cuts in that area. So we'll need to be conscious of what's going on in the upcoming budget in that respect. So why don't we go to the next slide? And now we get to the executive order that was issued by the governor recently that is addressed to several different agencies, including the Energy Commission, including the PUC, with very rapid turnarounds to come up with analysis, evaluation, and recommendations for changes that could be made to reduce electric rates. And so I encourage you, if you haven't and you're working in this area of energy at all, to take a look at the executive order in full. But part of the concern that a lot of people have, certainly the Wrens and others, is that energy efficiency programs will again be in the target for looking at reductions or eliminations in order to try to argue that that will help ratepayers save on their electric utility bills. Number two, the PUC being charged with looking at what might be changed in the law to reduce costs. That will take some time, of course. That would have those recommendations would have to go through the legislative process. But the CEC and number one and number three with the PUC, I think those are contemplated to be items that might be done administratively, and so they might present a more immediate kind of set of issues. So this is something to keep a close eye on. And let's go to the next slide. And just these are a couple more elements to the executive order. And notable about the number 4 with the California climate credit is that does come out of the GGRF, out of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. So to the extent that money comes out of that to address energy and electric utility rates, it's not available for other things that could reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So again, notable in that regard. And then we come back, as you can see in number 5, to this issue of how do we reduce the risk of wildfire ignition, but do it perhaps in a less expensive manner. So you can see that's going to be a hot topic, if you'll forgive the expression, as we get into the new year as well. So that's a very quick review of some of the things that we saw during 24, with a little bit of a window onto what we can expect to see in 2025. And I hope you all have a chance to dig in, weigh in, and be part of the conversation and the discussion, both within what happens potentially administratively as well as legislatively, because your engagement will be critical on the issues that get a lot of attention. And I want to thank you all and wish you the happiest of holiday seasons. Thanks, Angie.
Thank you, Roger. We are endlessly lucky to have you as part of our CivicWell family. So thanks for spending that time with us and doing all this tracking and the pep talk at the end, which is important for us to continue to be monitoring and coordinating all of this. I saw you addressed one question that already came up in the chat, and then I wondered, Beverly has some things here that might be worth elevating up. If you'd like to unmute and just kind of raise what you've mentioned here, including there's an event that you are anticipating folks might be interested in. Are you able to unmute? It's okay if you're not. She's basically suggesting that there is an event on rooftop solar and some of, demystifying some of the theories around its its contribution to increase ratepayer rates. So you can check the chat for that. She threw there's been some media around that as well, sort of dispelling some of the myths there around rooftop solar's contributions to costs. So great, thank you for that. And then I don't see any other questions in the chat. Feel free to raise your hand if you have a question for Roger. I know that was a lot. in a minute here, Kelsey's going to also share with you our legislative tracker that we have here at Seek. So we're continuously monitoring all of this for you. I have a question actually, while folks are still thinking, Roger. December 2nd, there was this special session of the legislature with Governor Newsom, and it was all about trying to prepare for this change in federal administration and to protect some of California's foundational policies, including climate. Have you heard, what's the scuttlebutt? What happened there? Do we know?
Well, the special session called by the governor coincided with the beginning of the new general legislative session, and it was one day only. So what they did was they opened the special session. A couple of bills have been introduced, notably addressing the budget and proposing to appropriate $25 million to the Attorney General to be able to litigate issues, if need be, that arise due to any actions by the new Trump administration. When the legislature comes back in January, then again the special session will convene, as well as the regular session, and we'll see more of what happens with respect to any product of the special session. The need for a special session in many respects, I think, was more a way to send a signal to the public about what the governor and the legislature see as necessary to preserve things that we do in California that may not be popular with the new Trump administration, because the substance of it, for example, appropriating money to the Attorney General, I mean, that could happen through the regular budget process, for example, or even on an expedited basis in the regular session with a 2/3 vote. So whether there was a real need to have a special session is debated among those who are observers. But I do think, Angie, the one thing that is part of this conversation, I mean, there are certainly concerns about actions the new administration might take regarding undocumented people and immigrants, about the right to choice, those kinds of issues, but also on climate. Climate is probably the third big item that there's a great deal of concern about with respect to what the new administration at the federal level may try to do. So I think we're going to see more bills introduced with regard to the special session. We'll see where it goes, but I think that's the essence of it.
Thanks, Roger. I don't see other questions here in the chat, but I do want to share with you all the latest version of Livable Places, which is a CivicWell publication. And so Roger and I both had articles in it this round, and so you get to hear a little bit more of Roger's perspective on sort of the outlook here on a policy in the policy world. And I think he and I both agree on some things around the funding outlook. And maybe that's my final question to you, Roger, is just, this group, this Learn call that we do every month, we're really looking at, where's the investments and where's the funding going to drop and how can we get access to it? You talked about the budget, GGR. We've talked about Prop 4. We know GGRF is up for reauthorization. We've talked about the energy efficiency budget. That's, got some threats to it right now. What is your view on the funding outlook in 2025 for funds that will actually be accessible for local governments and their partners?
Well, Angie, it's a great question, and I think it's got some different layers to it. With respect to federal funding for people who are looking at projects that they would fund in whole or in part through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act from the federal level, I think those are going to probably still be viable. After all, it was bipartisan. It was money coming to a lot of places, including a lot of red states and red districts. So I don't foresee that there's going to be a lot of reduction in that funding in all probability. For the Inflation Reduction Act, it's a little different. A lot of that money was targeted at clean energy. So I think you're going to see the administration, actually both with respect to the Infrastructure Act and the IRA, try to get as much money committed and out the door, the current administration, before President Biden leaves office. On the one hand. On the second hand, I think that, again, a lot of that money is going into Republican states and Republican districts. So that may help save a lot of that funding. But people should be prepared for a future beyond that, at least, that is not going to be very robust with respect to federal money. And I think that means looking very, very aggressively and diligently at state and local funding. I neglected to mention that the legislative analysts' assessment of where the budget may be for 25-26 is with about a $2 billion deficit. Now, that's subject to a lot of caveats, but if it's in that territory, then that's obviously a very a minor kind of deviation in terms of balancing the budget. So this may be an easier budget year at the state level than last year, although I wouldn't anticipate a lot of money being added back into, say, climate programs, for example. I think that's going to be more trying to preserve what's there and sustain it into the next year and the year beyond that at least. And so again, then that brings us back to the local level. I think it behooves people to look at how they can, both from public and private sources, potentially generate more funding at the local level. Of course, legislation that we sponsored, CivicWell, SB 852, a few years ago, that Senator Dodd carried to allow the creation of climate resilience districts, provides for a number of different avenues to raising funding at the local level. It does, in most cases, require an election, which is obviously a challenge these days. But it's not the only answer, but it's at least an idea or emblematic of the kind of thinking that I think is going to have to take ascendance in the next couple, 3, 4, 5 years in terms of looking for financing to address our sustainability and our climate efforts.
Yep. Thank you, Roger. Obviously, we agree. My article was called "It's Back on Us," which is just a call to action on let's retain these resources that we have here in California. Thank goodness for California. And I'm trying to make the case that it's the good time to reform our grant and funding deployment processes so we get these dollars more easily and less extractively to communities. So I think this is going to be a topic and a theme that we continue to deal with next year in Learn. We'll continue to kind of be monitoring this intersection between policy and how it relates to the investments that come to you all. So can everybody give Roger a little bit of love in the chat or throw him an emoji of some kind? Say thank you for all the work he's always doing for us out there, not just monitoring, but oftentimes going to bat for us as well.
Oh, thanks, Angie. And I just see a couple of things a couple of comments in the chat about climate resilience districts. And the only one I'm aware of that exists right now is in Sonoma County, which was actually grandfathered in. But I know there are some places that are thinking seriously about creating one. And for people who want more information on the requirements and how to set one up, we actually did a webinar through CivicWell that's, as far as I know, still on the website. So you can go there and watch the webinar, and that'll give you a lot of information about the nuts and bolts of setting up a climate resilience district and what the options and opportunities are. And thank you all.
Thank you. And so we will send all these resources out afterwards, and we'll track that one down as well and make sure it gets out to everybody on the climate resilience district. So, somebody already dropped it. Thanks, team. Thanks again, Roger. We're going to move into our last bit here. can just go to the next slide, and thank you all for a good engagement there. I'm going to hand it off to Kelsey Wolfcloud on the Seek team to give you some updates on our Seek forum.
Hi, everybody. As you all should know by now, the 16th Annual Seek Forum is going to be happening in San Jose in July. We're really excited. Planning has already started. And I just wanted to give you all the heads up that we are planning on putting out our call for session proposals in January. So it'll open early January, and it'll be open for about a month. And we will obviously be sending out that information as it comes. But if you have an idea for a session, and you want to start thinking about it, it's a good time to do so. So you got time to get all your ducks in a row on that when the time comes. In addition, we will be having our following up from Roger's presentation. We will be sending out our annual legislative update kind of roundup here with our currents publication that'll happen next week. If you're not signed up for Currents already, you should do so. I have a link to sign up, but if I don't have it at the moment, so you can send me an email if you want to sign up for Currents and are not part of it already. And that's all I got. Thank you all so much for being here. Pass it back over to Angie.
Okay, well, we know how we love to see you all in person, so we hope you come to San Jose. And, you know, we're doing these other reach events too, these regional convenings. So stay tuned as those come to a region near you. Let's go to our last slide here. Okay, it's really, you know, I just, at the end of the year here, I just want to say thank you so much. We've been doing these Learn calls for over 3 years, and you all continue to come and make it really well attended. I think we were at like almost, I don't know, 85 people today. And y'all are very engaged. I just hope we're providing a service here for you, and thanks for making it a great venue. And with that, we're going to go next to our bonus breakouts. If anybody wants to hang around. Oh, can you go back for just one slide? Just want to remind folks, we'll be back. You may not see a calendar invite. We're going to get those up and running. Another whole year of calendar invites for Learn. Next one will be on January 14th. So we'll see you then. If you ever have ideas for kinds of speakers that you want to see at Learn, please just send us a note. We'd love when you prompt us to bring speakers or have a program you want to hear about. Please let us know. And you're free to share this information with others, or take the resources that we email out afterwards today and forward it along to any of your friends that you think, you know, friends and colleagues that can use this information. And with that, I just want to say thank you for a great year and happy holidays. And we'll go right into bonus breakout. Oh, thanks, folks, on the chat. Very sweet. Love to see you all. So this bonus breakout is our time to just kind of, usually we shut off recording, and it's an informal discussion space.